Hi there and welcome to Do What Matters. I'm your host Shannon, and in today's episode we're diving into a topic that's all too familiar to many of us, feeling stuck. Have you ever had that overwhelming sense of wanting to move forward in your life, whether it's pursuing a new career, starting a business, or leaving an unfulfilling relationship, but something inside you just holds you back? Like, it's frustrating, right? Today we're going to unpack why that happens, explore the patterns that keep us rooted in place, and most importantly, discover strategies to break free. So grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and let's talk about how to take that first step to getting unstuck. So let's first look into why we actually feel stuck. Like, many of us spend a large part of our lives feeling stuck, right? And it's that state where we have a powerful urge to make progress, but an equally compelling force that keeps us rooted in place. For example, we might want to start our own business, but we stay in the 9-to-5 job for financial stability. Or we might long to leave a relationship that no longer serves us, but we fear what life might look outside of that relationship. And this creates a gap between what we want and what we actually do. A gap that also grows with time and often bringing anxiety and dissatisfaction along with it. Now, there are two reasons that prevents us from getting unstuck and that make the situation worse if we actually don't take action. And the first reason is that we have negative thought patterns, right? Negative thought patterns, like, they can have a significant impact on our mental well-being and the way we perceive our experiences in life. Like, they can trigger negative emotions such as anxiety, fear, and sadness, which in turn can lead to negative behaviors such as avoidance, procrastination, and even self-sabotage. For example, again, if we want to get out of that 9-to-5, but we constantly tell ourselves that we are not good enough or that we will never succeed in creating a successful business, then naturally we will feel demotivated and avoid taking action towards our goals. I mean, what's the point of trying if we feel like we will fail anyway? But these negative thought patterns, they can actually create a cycle of negativity that reinforces our feelings of being stuck, as we tend to focus on the obstacles and limitations rather than the possibilities and opportunities. And in turn, this makes it harder for us to find creative solutions to our problems. And it can actually prolong our feelings of being stuck. So let's go over some of the most common negative thought patterns. Now, the first is the all or nothing thinking. And this is the belief that if something isn't perfect, it's not worth doing it. And this can sound something like, if I can't get it right the first time, why bother? It's an approach that sets you up for avoidance, right? Rather than progress. But the truth is, to make progress, we don't need to take this major leap, right? We don't need to change everything at once. It literally just takes like a small step and preferably actually an imperfect step forward, because that's where we learn and that's where we can change our minds. The second one is catastrophizing. And this is when we expect the worst possible outcome and convince ourselves that it will be unbearable. But if you actually think about it, most failures aren't actually disasters. They're like opportunities to learn and to grow. Like, if you're not learning, if you're not making mistakes, and everything is just always going right, you're not getting any feedback and you will be stuck in like the same situation, right? So yeah, making mistakes is the only way to actually learn and grow. So viewing failure as a natural part of the process can help you reframe your fears. Now, another pattern is something that's called tunnel vision. And this is where you focus only on the negatives and ignore any positives. And this kind of like builds out of experience, right? So when you have a negative experience, like multiple times, you might be thinking that nothing goes right for me, right? But what's happening is that this actually blinds you from all the positive kind of things that may happen in your life. And because we are so prone to think negatively, it's just highlighting, it's constantly there, right? Whereas there might have been like way more positive wins in your life compared to negative, but the negative stays. So yeah, this tunnel vision is literally that you just only focus on the negative and forget about the positive. And then finally, there's also the shoulds and the musts. this is probably one of the major ones, actually. At least this is the one that I struggle the most with. This is why the comparison comes into play and all these expectations. But yeah, it's basically that we kind of like set these rigid rules, like we impose these rigid rules on ourselves, right? Like, I should have my life figured out by now. And these thoughts, as you probably have experienced, they create pretty much unnecessary pressure. And at the end of it, they just keep you stuck. So trying to not think in must and shoulds, but just more of like, I can and I'm able to do these type of things, create a different mindset. Okay, so those were just a couple of examples. Let's now just move on to reason number 2, and that's feeling overwhelmed. So overwhelm is a major barrier, right? When we experience overwhelming or fearful emotions, our brain's fight or flight response is activated, which can trigger a cascade of physiological and psychological changes in our body. These changes, for instance, can include an increased heart rate, blood pressure goes up, our respiration, but it can also decrease our cognitive processing and actually decision-making abilities. And because of that, when we are in this state, we may feel more prone to avoidant behaviors or to freeze rather than to take action towards our goals. For instance, we may struggle with like moving forwards or to make progress towards our desired outcomes, as our brain may focus on familiar or automatic responses rather than exploring new possibilities or considering alternative strategies. And this can then further exacerbate our feelings of being stuck and create this sense of helplessness or hopelessness. But by learning like coping strategies to prevent and manage feelings of overwhelm, we can increase our chances of success and decrease feelings of being stuck due to having too much on our plate. And that leads us to the second question. How can we actually get unstuck, right? So yeah, to overcome this gap between what we want and what we actually do, it's important to take action and steps towards like closing the gap, right? And we can do this by aligning our actions with our goals and values. Now, there's this book called Activating Happiness by Dr. Rachel Herstenberg, who's a psychotherapist and depression researcher. And the book describes these 5 principles that counteract low motivation and depression, or feelings like stuck in general. And I wanted to share these principles. So principle number 1 is approach rather than avoid. Now, this principle is based on the idea that our natural instinct when faced with difficult situations or emotions is to avoid or distract ourselves from them, because avoidance feels comfortable, right? Comfortable in the moment. It's like pretty much like hitting the snooze button on discomfort. But that temporary relief often comes with long-term consequences. Like when we avoid, we pretty much rob ourselves from the opportunities to grow, to build resilience, and to move closer to the life that we truly want to live. And this can lead to a cycle of negative thoughts and feelings, which can ultimately worsen our moods and lead to increased anxiety, stress, or depression. Like you've probably experienced it before, but a classic example of avoidance behavior is waking up and telling yourself that you will go to the gym after work. And in your mind, it's like a promise you fully intend to keep, right? But then eventually, like when you get back home from work around, let's say 6 p.m., you feel too tired to actually go. So you tell yourself that you deserve some rest and you will go tomorrow instead. And then tomorrow comes and the same thing happens. Like over time, this cycle creates a growing gap between your intentions and your actions, right? And that gap can then lead to frustration and guilt and even like a sense of failure. So a better way to handle this situation is that to approach it then. So for instance, when you get back home from work, you may feel tired, yes, and that's completely normal. But instead of giving in to the temptation to avoid it altogether, you choose to approach the situation in a way that aligns with your values. So maybe you don't have the energy for an intensive workout, but you can still put on your walking shoes and go for a walk for even if just 10 minutes or 50 minutes, like a stroll around the block. Like it's the small action, like it's only a small action, but it closes the gap between what you want and what you do, right? So by approaching rather than avoiding, you're reinforcing a positive habit and building momentum. And if you do this multiple times, day after day, weeks after weeks, month after month, like over time, these small amounts, these small moments of alignment, they add up. And you may start to notice that going for a walk, even when you didn't feel like it, leaves you like feeling refreshed and more energized. And that sense of accomplishment can generate minutes, hours, or even a full evening of positive emotions, which ripples like into other areas of your life. So the key is to recognize that approach doesn't mean perfection or overachieving. It simply means taking one step forward, even when it feels hard. And by doing so, you interrupt this cycle of avoidance and set yourself up for long-term emotional and mental well-being. Okay, the second principle is one that often gets overlooked, especially in our fast-paced, productivity-driven world, and that's implementing self-care. Now, self-care is not just about pampering yourself or indulging in luxury. It's about meeting really your basic needs, like protecting your mental and physical health and ensuring you have the energy and resilience to tackle life's challenges, right? Like think about it this way, like whenever we feel tired, hungry, overwhelmed, or even hungover, we're far more tempted to procrastinate on the things we should be doing instead of following through, right? Like our willpower and focus are so finite, like the finite resources. And when they are depleted, our ability to make good decisions and take effective action goes out of the window. Let's look at an example. Imagine you're working on a big project with a tight deadline. You've been at it for hours, skipping lunch to just get a little bit ahead. And on top of that, you went out with friends the night before and you may have had a few drinks or just stayed out too late and now you're feeling sluggish. And in this state, your energy levels are so low that even the thought of continuing with the project feels daunting and you decide to take a break, maybe a long one, and soon you find yourself scrolling on your phone or watching TV instead of working. And as time slips away, you start to feel overwhelmed by the mounting pressure to finish the project. You're now in a cycle where fatigue and overwhelm and procrastination feed into each other, leaving you feeling stuck and unmotivated. And it's simply a recipe for frustration, stress, and even burnout, right? So this is where self-care becomes essential. When we neglect our basic needs like sleep, nutrition, just having time for ourselves, you name all those basic needs, we set ourselves up for failure. But on the other hand, prioritizing self-care allows us to recharge, boost our energy levels, and cultivate the physical and mental resilience we need to show up for life. Like self-care isn't really like a luxury. It's literally the foundation for everything else we do. For example, if you had taken the time to eat a healthy lunch, hydrate, and perhaps gone for a quick walk, you'd have replenished your energy levels and returned to the project with a clearer mind. If you've gotten enough sleep the night before and set boundaries with your social plans, you also wouldn't have been finding the effects of like just a lack of sleep. So these small acts of self-care may seem insignificant, but they can profoundly like really impact your ability to stay productive and feel good about your efforts. So building healthy habits is literally one of the most effective ways to integrate self-care into your daily life. And small consistent actions like stretching in the morning, limiting your alcohol intake and sugar intake, aiming for like 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep, or just meditating for 10 minutes a day can like create these massive ripple effects that improves your mood, energy, and overall well-being. And over time, these habits form the foundation for a happier, more balanced life. Principle number 3 is a powerful mindset shift to follow discomfort or fear rather than letting your emotions dictate your decisions. Now, this approach requires recognizing that the things which often bring us the greatest growth and satisfaction in life are not always the most comfortable or immediately like gratifying. They're often on the other side of doing something hard, right? So whenever we face a situation where we have the choice to avoid or approach an activity, we find ourselves at what psychologists call a choice point. And these are pivotal moments when we decide whether to pursue choose short-term pleasures or long-term rewards. For instance, you've had a long day and before bed, you decide to reward yourself by watching an episode of your favorite Netflix show or whatever. And you tell yourself it's just gonna be one episode, just a way to unwind and relax. But before you know it, 45 minutes or 30 minutes, however long the episode is, have passed and the episode is now over. And that's where your choice point comes, right? So now you have the choice, are you gonna let your emotions pull you in towards clicking the next episode? Or are you gonna stop and actually listen to yourself? And even though you know that the smartest thing is to just go to bed now, despite your rational understanding, the emotional pull of instant gratification is so strong and you probably give in. You click play and you're rewarded with a rush of dopamine. And it feels good for now. But the next morning, reality sets in. You wake up groggy and regret staying up late. You're grumpy now and you're unfocused and frustrated with yourself for prioritizing a fleeting moment of pleasure over your long-term well-being, right? And probably your values even. And this is the cycle many of us find ourselves trapped in when we let emotions take the upper hand, choosing immediate comfort over the discomfort that leads to growth. But what if in that moment you chose differently, right? What if you recognized the choice point for what it was, a chance to make a mindful decision, by pausing to reflect and choosing discomfort over fleeting pleasure, you could break the cycle. And you might decide, for instance, next time to turn off the TV, prioritizing your sleep and your next day's productivity. And while that choice feels uncomfortable in the moment, you just want to keep on watching, it probably aligns with your values and then eventually with your long-term goals. And it will leave you feeling more rested and fulfilled. So the key here is to understand that discomfort isn't something to avoid. It's often actually a signpost pointing you towards growth. And when you're faced with the choice between what's easy and what's meaningful, leaning into discomfort is what builds resilience and self-discipline and long-term satisfaction. So just the next time when you find yourself at such a choice point, and this can be anything, the TV was just a simple example, but think or ask yourself, what decision aligns with the person I want to be? And if the answer involves a moment of discomfort, lean into that. Say no to the easy path and yes to the one that challenges you to grow. And these small but intentional decisions made consistently will bring you closer to your goals and aspirations, and ultimately leading to greater happiness and fulfillment and success. Okay, let's move on to principle number 4. When your schedule is full, do more. Now, this may sound counteractive, but hear me out. Research suggests that when we add more activities and commitments to our schedules, we can actually increase happiness and reduce feelings of overwhelm and burnout. And this is because our brains, they thrive on novelty and stimulation, right? So when we engage in new or challenging activities, our brain releases dopamine and other feel-good chemicals that improve our mood, and they boost energy levels and increase our overall sense of well-being. Think about how good you feel after trying something new, or after accomplishing a task that you've been putting off, or spending quality time on a hobby you love. And at the same time, having a full and active schedule can give us a sense of purpose and accomplishment, which can then further increase happiness and well-being. Crossing off items of your to-do list, working toward a goal, or engaging in meaningful activities helps to reinforce your sense of control and competence, and both of which are essential for happiness and mental health. But so it is important to note that the principle does not advocate overloading your schedule to the point that you're just so exhausted and you're neglecting your self-care, but rather it suggests that finding a balance between challenging yourself with new activities and then prioritizing rest and other self-care practices. It tries to make you find that balance, right? And one effective way to manage a full but balanced schedule is by using a daily planner. So this could be either a physical planner or a digital app or even a simple notebook, like whatever works best for your lifestyle. And here's how you can make the most of your planner. So the night before, and this is something that I always do, you simply just take a few minutes to jot down your planned activities for the next day. And these can be like ranging from like small essential tasks, like blocking out time for breakfast or brushing your teeth, to bigger kind of like commitments like attending meetings, exercising, or spending time with friends and family. And then you need to ensure that your schedule includes a mix of activities that challenge you and ones that bring you joy or relaxation. For example, you might schedule a work task in the morning, followed by a short walk or creative activity to break up your day. Then during the day, consult your planner regularly to keep yourself on track. So make a note of whether you completed each activity, and if not, just write down the reason why. And this practice not only keeps you accountable, but also helps you identify patterns, such as situations you tend to avoid or times of day when you're most productive. And you can also use your planner as a tool to reflect on the choice points, right? For example, did you choose to approach a task you've been avoiding? Or did you give in to procrastination? Like, understanding these moments can help you make more mindful decisions in the future. So by keeping a planner and staying intentional about how you structure your time, you'll begin to notice how small adjustments in your daily routine can add up to significant changes in your overall happiness and productivity. Like, a well-balanced, meaningful schedule not only helps you accomplish more, but also allows you to approach life with greater energy. And finally, principle number 5, stay on track by sharing momentary victories. Now, the final principle suggests that sharing small successes and positive experiences with others can help us stay motivated and on track towards our larger goals. So if you look evolutionary, forming strong bonds with others and belonging to like a tribe or community was pretty much the only way to survive, right? If we didn't belong to like a tribe or community, we literally, like, that was highly likely that you would just struggle to survive and then that you would perish, like all the predators, and it's hard to then find food and shelter. But like nowadays, we don't need others to physically survive like our ancestors did. Like, obviously we still need social interactions, and when these bonds are threatened or you perceive it as threatened, difficult word to say. Anyway, you may experience a range of negative emotions, right? So by sharing successes with others, you can receive support and encouragement and feel accepted and loved. And this in turn helps you to stay engaged and motivated in the pursuit of your goals. And it also helps elicit positive emotions. Like, just think about one of the first things you do when something good happens to you. Maybe you got in like your chosen university, or you went to a new exercise class, or you stuck through, like you cooked a new dish, like whatever it is, whatever successes or positive experiences you are having, you're likely to immediately tell someone about it, right? And if that person then responds in a way that shows interest and excitement, you're more likely to not only experience a mood boost and you feel like happier, but you also feel closer to the person. And like the positive experience will then become even more significant. So by sharing these kind of like victories with others, you can stay motivated and track towards your larger goals, and then build a sense of community and support around your pursuit of happiness and well-being. Okay, that was all for today. Thank you for joining me on Do What Matters. If you found this episode helpful, share with someone who might need it, and don't forget to subscribe. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.